Welcome to the Go Big with Gib podcast, where we talk to professionals, business owners, and entrepreneurs about their big wins. Welcome to this episode of Go Big with Gib. Today I've got one of my very good friends, Corey Harelson, here on the show. Corey, how are you today?
Doing awesome, Gib. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited to have you. Corey, if you could, introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Corey Harelson. I have a mobile home park syndication company called Freedom Investing Group, and I've been investing in mobile home parks since 2016, and also doing some other fun things, trying to balance being a good father and living a fun life, and running a real estate syndication business. So,
Corey, that's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about, first of all, what part of the country are you living in?
I'm in Boise, Idaho, land of potatoes and hops.
Very cool. And you mentioned that you had a family. I think before the show started, you mentioned that you had two children as well. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, 10 and 6, and yeah, they were kind of a big driver for what got me into the mobile home park and real estate game to begin with. I back in 2015, I used to be a structural engineer before the real estate thing. Back in 2015, I was working 60 to 80 hour week. So I was working a ton and feeling like I was missing seeing my kid grow up. At the time, I only had one kid. He was 2, not even 2. And I was just working all the time. I wasn't seeing him. And there was a week straight where I went without seeing him awake. Like I would leave in the morning before he woke up, get home in the evening after he was asleep, and just literally never saw him awake. And so then it was, I think, on Sunday of that week, I think it was about 5 o'clock, and I was like, I'm done. Like, I got to go home. I'm going to go home and put my kid to bed. Gosh dang it. And so I went home early enough that Sunday to put him to bed, and I went to take him away from my wife to go give him his bath and everything. And he looked at me like I was a total stranger and was like clawing and crying, trying to get back to mom, like he didn't even know me. And that totally broke my heart. And that was when I knew I had to do something different. It was pretty tough. But so I that's when I did what everybody else did. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, that same book that got so many people into it. And was like, oh my gosh, assets that pay you, there's a way out. Yeah.
So what year was it when you had that aha moment where you were like, gosh, something's got to change. You know, I've got a small child and a family and I need to be at home more?
2015. It was 2015. And up until I had my kid, it was, I had my career, my wife had hers. And so I didn't really, it seemed fine. But then at that point, it was like I needed to do something different. I couldn't keep doing that until I was 65 and just be an absentee parent.
Yeah. So talk to me about that transition. How did you make the transition from being a structural engineer to investing in mobile home parks?
So we originally, when my wife and I decided to get into real estate, we were going to do duplex, threeplex, fourplex, was our original criteria. We have to pick a niche. That's the niche we picked. I'm an engineer. I'm left brain. So I built a spreadsheet, pro forma spreadsheet. I figured out how to build that, and I started analyzing deals, and I quickly got discouraged. A lot of the deals, even back then, the price to rent ratios just weren't great. They weren't going to cash flow very much, if at all. And then I stumbled on a mobile home park for sale on Craigslist, of all places. It was a little, this was just me and my wife investing our money at the time. And so it was a little 9-lot thing. Didn't end up buying that one, but I punched that into my spreadsheet and it looked a lot better, and it kind of opened my eyes and said, oh, this is odd. So I ended up syncing up with the only person I knew in real life who invested in real estate. He was our real estate agent, and he had some rental properties. And I met up with my friend Matt, and I said, Matt, I'm thinking of doing something crazy, and I need you to talk me out of it. I need you to tell me why. I'm thinking of buying a mobile home park. And he said, oh no, I know guys who own those. They're cash cows. And so I just kind of dove in and learned as much as I could, and we bought our first park in 2016, a little 12-unit thing, a 10-minute bike ride from our house.
Wow. So talk to me about the advantages of investing in mobile home parks, compared to something like multifamily?
Sure. Yeah. So mobile home parks and multifamily, they're both housing. So they have that in common. They're both rental real estate, but there are some pretty big differences. So first off, just as far as demand goes, mobile home parks are the most affordable form of housing in the country. And we're in an affordable housing crisis right now. So that's huge. The only form of housing that I know of that works from an affordable standpoint without government subsidy. So there's affordable apartments, but typically those you've either got incentives to develop it and keep the rents low with LIHTC, or you've got direct subsidies to residents with like a Section 8. There's some sort of government subsidy that makes the apartments affordable. But otherwise, I mean, the average apartment rent in the country is somewhere around $2,000 a month right now, which for most Americans is not affordable. So whereas mobile home park rent, some of our most expensive parks just past the $500 lot rent mark. So they're much more affordable. So from a demand standpoint, you've got that. And then the other big difference is that in a mobile home park, typically in most cases, the resident will own the home and we will own the land. So it's really they're just renting to be able to keep their home on our land. So we're both owners. We're in it together. So they own the home, we own the land. We both have an incentive to want to make the community nice. And so typically when we come in and try to find an undermanaged community, once we come in and start actually fixing things up and doing the CapEx and taking care of the deferred maintenance, the residents, once they see that, will by and large get behind us and be appreciative. And so we tend to, even though it's a lower income tenant, we do have a high quality of tenant typically. And there's some other advantages with that as well, where, if the leaky toilet leaks, it's not our toilet, it's their toilet. So the little ticky-tack maintenance stuff is less, although we do have, there's still the main water lines and main water pipes and things that we do need to maintain. And then the other cool thing is the turnover is really low because they've got a bunch of equity in their home and they've got a really good, they would have to pay much more to be able to share a wall in a crappy apartment somewhere with neighbors banging on the wall when their kids cry versus having a yard, being able to park by their door. And it's cheaper. So it's a really good deal. So they tend not to leave. And when they do, they want to harvest the equity in their home. So they tend to sell their home, which means they'll find your replacement tenant for you. They still have to pass our background check, but it's actually, when we have turnover, quite common for us to have a 0-day turnover. They move out on the 30th, the next person moves in on the 1st, so we get zero cost, 0-day turns. So there's lots of good benefits to it.
Yeah, no, I love that. Talk to me a little bit about the typical returns that a limited partner could expect in a mobile home park investment. And I'm not necessarily talking about any one specific deal, but like based on the current market conditions and the current environment, I mean, what kind of returns would be typical and what's the hold period, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So they obviously vary from deal to deal, but I think one of the, and mobile home parks are well known for their cash flow. So it's typically going to be a bit higher cash flow over the life of the hold than your standard multifamily, obviously varying deal to deal. But bigger than the cash flow, I think the thing they're not known for that I think is actually the bigger opportunity is the value add, because there's just so many of these things that are so undermanaged and they're in an area where there's just desperate need for affordable housing and there's empty pads, and you can bring in new homes and sell the homes. And actually it's not only just, maybe making it nicer and so that you can justify a little bit higher of a rent, but the bigger issue is actually being able to add units. It's like being able to add a floor to your apartment building. So you're actually adding extra supply of affordable housing. So the value add with that is huge. So every lot that you fill, depending on the area, could be worth $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 of extra equity into the deal. So the value add piece is huge. So our typical plan for the hold period is these are assets that are going to be good for a really long time. And once they're full, it's a lot of work to get them full. You have to bring in the capital and bring in the homes and get them set up. And there's some construction that goes along with that. But once they're full, they're very low maintenance, very low risk, very stable. They were one of the best performing assets in both the Great Recession and through the pandemic. And so the idea is that we want to hold these for a really long time. So I'm not looking to, we do some deals sometimes where we will sell, but for the most part, our plan is to build up into a cash out So we'll improve the value and then do a cash out refinance to get investors their capital back, which is typically, your mileage may vary, but typically a non-taxable event in a cash out refi. So there's this no tax event, you get your capital back, and then everybody, including the investor, still owns it, and we can cash flow for the long term. So that's usually our strategy. It's super cool because you can take the same chunk of capital and just build up this portfolio over time. You don't lose the asset like you would if you sell, and you also don't trigger the huge depreciation recapture and all that, all the tax headaches. So that's our typical business plan that with them. And then as far as returns go, we're usually aiming for with conservative underwriting to be targeting IRRs in the high teens or up around 20 is usually where we're targeting.
So you're basically, you're buy and hold investing then. It sounds like, you're looking to hold the mobile home park, potentially it could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Is there any cap to how long you would expect to hold it? Or is it just kind of like, as long as all the economics look good and we're increasing value and we're getting cash flow, we're just going to hold this property as long as possible? So
most of our deals, it's a hold as long as possible. And so we're always looking to partner with people who have a long-term mindset. We're not flipping these things. Typically, that's it. We've partnered with some other people on somewhere. It looks like, man, we can really shoot this value up and sell it. So it's not that we don't do those deals too, but typically, yeah, we're looking for very long-term hold.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Now, what are most of these investments? Are they 506B or 506C, or does it just kind of vary from deal to deal?
So we've done both 506Bs and 506Cs. And so the last one, what we did, which worked really well, was to actually do a 506B to C conversion. So we've got our investor list with investors that we personally know and we have a pre-existing relationship with. And so some of them, we do have some of them that are not accredited, and we don't, that have been with us since the first five that we syndicated were all 506B. And so we don't want to necessarily leave them out. So that gives them a chance to get in. And then it's actually a pretty cool thing you can do where you're not advertising the deal or anything. You're following all the 506B rules, and then you shut that down, and then you open up a 506C. So it kind of lets people. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. So.
Yeah, no, that is the best of both worlds, because it's unfortunate when you've got a 506C and you can only accept accredited investors, and you have a bunch of friends and existing investors that would like to invest but are not able to do so. So that's kind of cool. So is that a common thing for you to do, to do the 506B to 506C conversion, or is it just kind of something you did recently that worked really well?
We just did it for the first time on our last deal that closed in at the end of May.
Now, is it typical for you to acquire mobile home parks where you can add additional, pads? Is that common, or how often is it that you buy one that still has the meat on the bone, so to speak, where you can build additional pads out?
Quite on almost all of them that we bought, that's the case. And the reason is because almost all mobile home parks were built in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. That's when they had the big boom, and they kind of stopped building them after the 70s. There's a few that have gotten built since then, but not very many. And so what the phase that we're in right now is you've got all these owners who are either first or second generation owners who built these things. They're older, they're kind of at retirement age. They tend to not even have a mortgage on them. They've owned these things forever. So they just haven't had much incentive. The mailbox money's good enough. They haven't had much incentive to actually go maximize them. And so you can drive around and look in your area. There probably are some. You drive around and look, and some are really nice. And there's probably another one right down the street from that one that has potholes in the road, and the trees are overgrown, and 40% of the lots are vacant. And there's no reason for that. The demand is there. The reason is just because it takes just enough effort and just enough capital that if the mailbox money's good enough, you might not do it. And so you've got to actually have the money to bring the home in. You've got to coordinate. You got to find the home. You've got to coordinate with the mover to get it brought in. You got to coordinate with some kind of a contractor to come and build steps and hook up the utilities. If it's a used home, you might need to renovate it. So there's a bunch of steps to it that we can do. And when you do, it's very worth it, because then you can sell the home and recoup your capital, usually make a profit on the sale. But even if you didn't make a profit, the boost to the equity is huge. So the one we closed on in May is 79 lots and had 24 vacant. And so for every lot we fill, that's going to be $60,000 to $80,000 of equity times 24. There's on a 79 lot park, it's a huge return on investment. And that's 24 more families in a community that really needs the housing. That's 24 more families that get an affordable place to call home. So it's a pretty cool thing. So that's the type of parks that we look for.
This episode of Go Big with Gib is brought to you by Irons Equity. At Irons Equity, we specialize in helping investors like you create long-term generational wealth and save money on taxes through recession-resistant real estate investments that create passive income for you and your family. If you want to secure your financial future, go to investwithgib.com to schedule a 30-minute introductory meeting with me, Gib Irons. Again, that's investwithgib.com. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So Corey, what parts of the country are you investing in terms of your mobile home parks? Is there a specific market that you're targeting, or specific markets that you feel like have really good dynamics, or is it more just based on what's available out there? Because I know there's a very limited supply of mobile home parks, right? Like they're a lot more difficult to find, I would think, than multifamily, but I could be wrong.
There's a lot less of them. So it's estimated there's 44,000 mobile home parks total in the country. I don't know how many apartment buildings there are, but it's a lot more than that. Yes. So the first several years, we've got location criteria as far as what we look for in the metro with population and housing, median home. We want $200,000 median home costs and 100,000 people in the metro. But for the first several years, we were pretty scattered. And it was good in the sense that we could find good deals. And it was also good in that we got to try out a bunch of locations and really figure out what we like and what we don't like. So currently right now, the market that we're targeting the hardest is Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. I really like those markets. We're in a bunch of other places: Minnesota, Illinois, Arizona. I have owned in Michigan. I used to own in Idaho, where I live. But I like that. I like those locations. The big thing I like about those locations compared to the others is if you're filling in homes, it's the availability of used homes in those areas. So up in Minnesota, there's tons of demand where our parks are, but it's really hard to find. We've got them pretty much full now, but it's been really hard to find homes, find people who work on homes. It's just a lot more work to get it done. Whereas it just seems like every corner you go to, there's a mobile home in those states. And so there's plenty of used homes, plenty of people that work on used homes, plenty of people that move used homes. So the whole process of the value add, it just seems easier in those markets. And the price to rent ratios are right, as far as there's plenty of parks that need the value add that are sold at a reasonable price where it'll actually cash flow and produce good returns. So really, really digging on Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee right now.
No, that's fantastic. Now, do you have any deals going on right now that you can talk about? Do you have anything new coming on the horizon, or is that confidential what you've got? I know you've always got something going on, but are you at liberty to talk about any deals you've got going on?
We do have a portfolio under contract. Our PPM's not quite done on it yet, so we're starting out 506C, so I think it's okay for me to say it on this one because of the size, but it's going to be really good. I'll leave it at that. It's in Tennessee, and it's in growing markets. It's going to be really good. So should be. I don't know when this is airing, but should be coming out soon.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll check back with you about that, because that sounds like a very exciting opportunity, and I'm happy for you. So, Corey, let's transition a little bit. I love talking to you about what you're doing with mobile home park investing. I think it's a really good asset class. I mean, it's a great asset class. It's a great place to be. I've always personally wanted to do something in mobile home parks, but I just never have. And so, anyway, I think it's fascinating. But let's transition now and talk a little bit about mindset. I know that you're a super intense guy. You've done a lot of different things. You had a career climbing. I think you've done a lot of ultra races and maybe Ironmans. And, I don't even know all the stuff that you've done, but I know you've got a lot of athleticism and you're just a really intense guy that likes to really push the envelope. Through that, you developed a really good mindset, a really strong mindset. Talk to me a little bit about mindset and how important that is to you in your investment journey. And then I'd love to hear a couple of stories from you about how you have used your mindset to overcome different challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to, all I wanted to do for many years was climb. And then at some point I had an accident where I blew up my hand and had a kid at the same time. So I needed to scale back time. So then I ended up ultra running a bunch. And I have learned a bunch of lessons in these that seem like they translate over to investing pretty well, especially because these are things where you are constantly evaluating risk and where things are going to go wrong. And so you have to be able to cope with that. So I got a couple stories I guess I can share with you. So that I think they kind of relate. So I guess on the investment side, I had a park that went bad. I had a bunch of parks that have done very, very well, and all the awesome things about mobile home parks, but I had one that did not go well. And fortunately, it was just it was a personal money. I didn't have any investor money in it, thank goodness. But I bought this park. It was in a beautiful location, right on a river, stand-up paddle boarders going by. It was nice, well maintained. Did all my due diligence on it, but it had one feature that I hadn't done before, and this was prior to me doing any syndication stuff, so it was just mine. But it had a wastewater treatment plant, so it was private sewer effectively. There was no city sewer to hook into, and that worried me. So I did a whole bunch of research on how to do due diligence on these things, and I had it inspected. I talked to I interviewed the operator. They had a great operator. I talked to the city, the county, the state, the federal EPA, everybody. Everything was tip top. I did all the due diligence that everybody said you should do. Everything's fine. I screwed up and I made a big mistake on that one. And And here's the tip. If I'd done this one thing, this deal would have been a home run. I took the appraiser's word for the replacement cost for the insurance. So they had the appraisal. In the appraisal, they list the things that you're going to insure, and they list their recommended replacement costs, which is what the insurance uses to set the values. And that was way off. Everything was fine for about a year, and then the building had a fire and the plant totaled. And that replacement cost was off by about a factor of 10. And it was terrifying. Once I realized what was happening, we had to get this thing replaced. I sat down with I thought we were losing there was a point where I sat down and had a teary conversation with my wife. Like I was crying. I was like, I had personally guaranteed the loan, right? So I thought we were going to lose the house and the whole 9 yards. It was really awful. So I'll get back to how that one turned out, but I think it relates to my other story, which is related to an ultra marathon I was running. I for several years ran ultra marathons, which is just anything longer than a marathon. And I typically do these on trails, over mountains kind of races. They're super fun.
It doesn't sound super fun to me, but I'm going to take your word for it.
The food's much better too. If you join a road race, everybody's eating goose. The aid stations on these things are serving breakfast burritos and pancakes. It's great. Cause you just need as many calories coming in as you can get. But so anyway, this was the Leadville 100. I ran that in 2014. And so I had never done, this is my first 100-mile race that I had ever done. You start at 5 or 5:30 in the morning. I had run all throughout the day, and now it's that night. And it's somewhere, I think around 1 a.m. I had come into this aid station, and I remember thinking I had about a marathon to go. So it was mile 70 something, because I had about a marathon to go. And I remember thinking, like, I can't, my legs. This was a Leadville, Colorado, so it's way high elevation. It's 1 a.m. It was very cold, and my legs were so sore and tired. I couldn't actually move fast enough to keep myself warm. So I had a giant down coat on because I was just basically shuffling at this point in the race. And I made the mistake of sitting down next to a space heater in the medical tent. And it was nice and warm, and people were bringing me soup and stuff. And I was in this total just pity party. I didn't train hard enough to be here. I don't deserve to be here. This is dumb. Why am I doing this? I can't, all of the negative thoughts that were going, because my legs were just screaming. And I just couldn't move him. And they brought this guy into the aid station. They kind of carried him in, sort of. He had passed out cold on the trail. They haul him in. They put him up on the table. They're about to hook him up to an IV, which is an automatic disqualification if you have to get an IV. You're out of the race. And he kind of comes to and sees what they're doing, fights them off, and staggers out of the tent into the night to keep going. This guy who had passed out cold. And I'm sitting here going, what's my excuse again? Like, my legs hurt. All right. So I just get up and I had to take one step. I had to just not think about the fact I had a marathon to go. And I had to just think about, like, I can take one step and I can take another step, and I think I can at least walk to the next aid station. So if I can still walk, I'm not done. I'm just going to keep going. And so I just stumbled out into the night, and it was still a long time to go, but I did end up finishing the race.
So you ran 100 miles. What was your time on that?
28 hours and 40 some odd minutes. So
28 hours?
Yes. Yeah. 28. Yeah. So I guess the lesson learned from that was, if you can take another step, you're not done. Right. And so I thought I was done. I was like, there's no way I can do another marathon right now. I'm looking at the whole thing. It's like, how do you eat an elephant, right? You one bite at a time. I was looking at the whole elephant. I have another marathon to go. There's no way I can run a marathon like this, but I could sure just walk to the next aid station, was just a few miles up the road. I could walk. So if you can keep going, you're not done. And so I guess getting back to my wastewater treatment plant story, so I'm sitting there having this teary conversation with my wife. The plant was going to be insanely expensive, and not to mention the temporary pumping fees in the meantime. As soon as the insurance was covering that for a few months, and as soon as that ran out, I didn't know what we were going to do. And so I didn't know what to do. I was kind of in the same thing, just throwing up my arms like, we're doomed here. And but I said, okay, what can I do? Well, I know a bunch of other people. I'm going to just start calling and seeing if somebody has a good idea. So I started making phone calls to people, friends who own parks, other things. And the best advice I got was from my friend Blake, who said, hey man, and I was like, it's the personally guaranteed loan, all this stuff. And he goes, you just need to call your banker and level with them. And so I did. I picked up the phone and called my bank that I had the loan with. And I said, hey, John, like, I got a problem. Like, this is what's going on. Like, I never want to be the person who's, I mean, I don't care if it's an investor or a bank. Like, if someone's giving me money, I don't ever want to be the person who's not going to be able to get that back. But I said, I got a problem. And honestly, John, like, here's what I've got. I've got a HELOC. I've got an emergency fund, but it's not enough. I don't know what to do here. And he worked with me on it. We had done the right things. We had increased the revenue. We'd build back water and sewer. We'd filled in empty lots. We'd done the things so that the NOI had gone up quite a bit, and I had found it at a really good price. So we looked at it and was like, well, you've got a bunch of equity in it. And so he worked with me, and we did a cash out refi on the park, to cover the gap that my emergency funds wouldn't do. So that's the power of relationships, and B, that's the power of, hey, I can at least make some phone calls here. You just got to, you may not even know all the steps, but if you can just figure out a next step, then you're not done. And so, yeah, we did it. We replaced the waste. We executed the whole replacement project of the infrastructure of this wastewater treatment plant. Now it's got brand new infrastructure, right? And then we ended up selling the park for $800,000 more than I bought it for 1.75 and sold it for 2.5, so $750,000 more than we bought it for. So I still ended up down on the deal, but not nearly down as much as I would have if I just threw up my hands and quit. And so if you're ever in a tough pickle, don't give up. Just look for that next step.
I love that. You know, I've had times in my life where I wanted to give up and I didn't really know where to turn. And, you know, a lot of times it can just be as simple as making a bunch of phone calls and telling people what you're dealing with and saying, hey, look, this is my problem. Have you ever run into anything like this? Can you give me any kind of suggestions? And, you know, sometimes it takes a lot of those kind of phone calls and you start to think like, gosh, you know, it's never going to happen, but then you just never know where help is going to come from. And I've definitely had some people in the past that, you know, I've reached out when I was at a point where I was ready to give up and somebody was able to give me that recommendation, like your friend saying for you to call the banker. I mean, that, you know, that was a game changer for you. And it turns out that like honesty was the best policy. I mean, you called the banker, you shot them really straight. You know, told them what you were up against and they were able to help you instead of turning on you and saying, oh gosh, well, Corey, you know, I guess we're going to have to call in your note. You really laid all your cards out on the table and it worked out. And you ended up getting out of that situation, you know, with very minimal damage, considering you were in a very, very bad spot for a period of time there.
Right. And I try to think of it now as if it's like lessons learned, right? So I actually, and not even lessons learned, but like what are the good things I learned from it? So I think of that money like I have a PhD in infrastructure replacement at this point, and we actually did use that knowledge. So I did another deal that we bought in Illinois where we bought the property from someone who was in a similar situation to us, where he had a failing well water system and he had the equity in the property, but he didn't have the cash to execute the project that needed to happen. It was about a $600,000 project. And so we came in and bought it. We got it at a very good price, and he gave us a seller credit for most of the well system replacement. So we got that at a very, very low basis, executed the replacement, which is done now. And now we have this 100% occupied park where we saved the community. I mean, you can't have a community with no water. We basically saved this community, and it's got brand new infrastructure, 100% occupied, tenant-owned home park. It's pretty awesome. So I'm hoping I can find some more deals like that where we kind of you take that experience and make lemonade out of the lemons.
Corey, that's fantastic, man. So, look, for the folks that have heard you here on the podcast today that want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, so I've got actually a free PDF that kind of compares mobile home parks to multifamily, and you can get that at passivemhp.com. And LinkedIn is also a good spot too. I'm on there a lot.
Yeah, you're super active on LinkedIn. Enjoy following your content. Well, man, look, it's been fantastic to be with you. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and look forward to running into you again soon.
Heck yeah. Thanks, Gib.
Thanks, Corey. Thank you for listening to this episode of Go Big with Gib. If you haven't already, go follow us on social media at Gib Irons. We'll see you next time.